Israel-Palestinian conflict marks its deadliest day as scenes of terror unfold in Gaza. This is a CNN story. Israel bombed the house of Hamas, Gaza leader, and obliterated a family's home in the deadliest day of the week. Long conflicts so far, according to the data from Palestinian Health Ministry and Gaza and Israeli authorities. The Israeli Defense IDF said it had bombed the house of Yahya Sinwar, Hamas's leader since 2017, on early Sunday morning. IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Hidai Zilberman told local media that Sinwar had been unhurt in the airstrike. 2 Israeli strikes in Gaza killed at least 43 Palestinians, including 8 children and 50 others, most of whom were women and children. On Sunday, told Gaza the total death climbed to 197, including 58 children, 34 women. Since the beginning of the Israeli airstrikes on Gaza this week, at least 1,235 Palestinians have been injured, with the number expected to rise. The health ministry said as paramedics continue to carry out search operations, 10 Israelis have been killed by rockets fired from Gaza, according to the IDF. I can go on giving you more numbers about what happened in 2014 Gaza war, which saw more than 2,200 Gazans killed during the fighting, approximately half of them civilians, including more than 550 children, according to the United Nations report. Look, anytime you read these articles and you see children, breaks your heart. Anytime. When I was in Iran and we saw the war happening, and you hear stories that such and such friend of yours that you had is no longer with you because a bomb was dropped by Iraq on their home. I mean, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous when you're in it. Of course it's heart-wrenching while this is taking place. But why is it really going on, and why is it not stopping? I think that's the question I would want to address today.
I got a couple answers for that. And I think from the research I've done is right now that you've got 2 leaders that have given up on the idea of lasting peace. So you got Netanyahu and you got the leader of Hamas, or Palestine, that the only thing they can go for now is total victory, because they've given up on the idea that there can be peace. So that's why it's going on. And you know what? You have to just look at it this way. I don't trust Hamas when they're talking about some of the numbers and everything like this, because their history is they put civilians where the bombs are, where the missiles are, where the things that Israel is attacking, they load it up with civilians and children. They don't care. And the other thing, too, is Israel is warning them oftentimes when the bombs are coming to high target areas. They're giving them the opportunity to clear out a little bit. So that's part of the reason there's so many children that are dying, so many civilians that are dying, is because that's part of their strategy to put civilians there where they know the airstrikes are coming. So it's unfortunate. It's the worst fighting since 2014. There's more airstrikes this morning that have been coming in, so the thing has not leveled off at all. And it's dangerous. And I think the United States has to play a pretty key role in where this, eventually goes and how it can simmer down.
So I this past weekend, I went to my friend's house, my friend Orr, who lives here in Delray. Orr, O-R.
Got it.
Like gold. And his parents were in town from Israel. They live just outside of Tel Aviv. And I haven't seen his parents since, ironically, 2014, when I was in Israel for Orr's wedding. So I'm talking to the parents. I was with my mom. We were all catching up. It was a family barbecue. It was his daughter's 4th birthday. We had a nice time. And the father, his name is Eric. I said, dude, what is going on here? Like, let me hear it from your perspective. You got out. How did you even get out? Like, meaning, he goes, we flew out the day the fighting started, ironically enough. So he's been out, been watching all this. And I said, break this down for me of what's going on. And here's a couple of things that we discussed. So number one, I think it's important to understand this is not a religious war. This isn't like, you're Jewish, I'll kill you. You're Arabic, you're Muslim, I'll kill you. This is a pure land situation. And people say, well, this fighting goes back thousands and thousands of years. Well, it's actually not true. It actually just goes back a couple hundred years, because it happened with the Ottoman Empire in the 18th, 19th century, right before World War I. And then the British Empire, they came in and they were divvying up the land, and they promised this, and
half
they promised
Jewish,
that.
half Saudi Arabia,
half this, half
Muslim,
that.
Christian, Muslim, Jewish.
So ultimately what happened was, in 1947, Israel became a state. In 1948, they gave them their land, and there was a full-on war. And Israel, luckily for them, they won the war in 1948. They won the Six-Day War in 1967. They won the other war. Like, what happens in war? You won the war. You take the land. And essentially what has happened is every so often there's been deals that they've tried to cut. And Israel has I actually saw this on Prager University, pretty trusted source, I would say. They did a expose on this. They said Israel has tried to make peace and compromise, and they've given them 95% of the land. And every time, without fail, the PLO, whether under Yasser Arafat or the Hamas, has rejected the deal. So ultimately, there's a couple different angles here. In Israel, there's definitely two factions. There's the Bibi Netanyahu, who's basically fighting for his political life and is an instigator of sorts. And then there's more the liberal side of Israel that they would like to coexist. But then there's parts of Hamas or Palestine where they genuinely just want to have a nice life to raise their kids and live in peace. And they have a major bone to pick with Israel that they're not allowing them to live their best life. And then there's the people who are, all they see is red. And Israel doesn't have a right to exist. And it's something called the three no's. No, they don't have a right to exist. No, they don't have a right to the land. No, they don't have the right to live in peace. And
that's Hamas, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. With that mentality, how are you supposed to coexist with someone that doesn't have believe in your right to exist, doesn't believe that it's your land? Israel's not going anywhere. They've won every single war. They've given up land. They've given up the Golan Heights. They've given up the Sinai Peninsula. They've given up land on the Jordan side of the river. And there's no agreement that some Palestinians will ever agree to unless Israel leaves the land, and which they're not going to do. So thank God that at least Israel has this Iron Dome situation going on, because can you imagine if someone's firing 5,000 rockets and they all hit civilians? So because they have this amazing technology and they're basically shooting down 95% of missiles, which means dozens of missiles still land on innocent people. Could you imagine what would be happening in Israel if those missiles actually did land?
Well, they would have ended the war a lot quicker, probably.
But I will say one thing, and it sounds like I'm defending Israel, and obviously I'm a little biased here, being Jewish and have family in Israel. I will say that on one of the holiest days of Ramadan, there's the Dome of the Rock. Bibi Netanyahu set troops in and dismantled Muslims praying near the Dome of the Rock in East Jerusalem on Ramadan, one of the holy, so even him, my friend's dad, who was like, this is unacceptable. This is ridiculous. You can't do this. This is holiest day of year for the Muslims. This is bullshit. So you're talking about an Israeli who's basically saying, Bibi Netanyahu, what the hell are you thinking? So it's such a gray area. There's no black and white here. But the last thing that I'll say is this, and I'll turn it over to you, PBD. He did say the one difference between Israelis and a certain portion of Hamas, Palestinians, what do you call it, is the respect for life. There's no Israeli suicide bombers. There are a lot of people in that world that basically believe in giving up their life and don't have a respect for life and are willing to blow themselves up. And what type of person is willing to do that? Ask yourself that question. Who's willing to just blow themselves up for a cause? And it's not religious. It's socioeconomic. It's land. It's political. And that was his biggest takeaway, even though he was defending.
By the way, very good commentary, Adam. That was very helpful. And the way you did it, I appreciate that, the way you explained both sides. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.